Welcome to episode 117 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Checo Chocolate and FredEx edition of the Grip Strip Podcast, coming off the greatest day in motorsports this past Sunday. There was plenty of racing outside of that we'll get into, and we have to keep on going. There's racing going on this week, too, so we'll get into all of that as well. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm here with my co host, Josh Fine. What's going on, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil. It was a great day of motorsports yesterday and lived up to its billing for the most part. The greatest day in motorsports. We had a lot of rain in Monaco, and Ferrari threw it away. And then, of course, the Indianapolis 500 was really awesome to watch throughout the whole race. And then Coke 600 was actually compelling for the first time in probably a decade. So, a lot of great racing that we saw yesterday, and definitely, yeah, the greatest day in motorsports for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Formula One race was marred by poor execution of getting the race started for like over an hour, which basically screwed up a lot of plans on my end. But they don't really give a fuck what I think. But the fact is, the FIA did a terrible job there. We'll get into that. But as you said, Josh, Ferrari gave it away. Checo Perez did a great job, qualified ahead of his whiny teammate, and they didn't take it away from him, even though I kind of had a fear they were going to make a move over early in the race. But they didn't make that call, and in turn, their strategy of the overcut um, gave them the what eventually worked out to be a 1-3 finish. And then Carlos Sainz call to stay out, probably stayed out a little too long to get onto the slicks, was probably a defining factor for him why he didn't win, but we'll get into that. But he finished second. Charles Leclerc qualifies on pole. He's from Monaco. He's never finished a race there. Finally finishes a race. He was leading by 4 seconds at one point and leaves finishing fourth and losing more ground in the point standings to Max Verstappen, and will and now Sergio Perez is within 15 points of the lead. So now there's actually three drivers competing for this championship. So interesting to look at that as the season goes on. And they go to Azerbaijan here in a couple of weeks' time, there, and then Montreal for the first time in a few years. Indianapolis 500 saw Marcus Ericsson win for Chip Ganassi Racing. To be honest, I didn't think that he would be the Chip Ganassi guy that would win. You could have chosen the guy who led the most laps and the guy who's been the guy who has led more laps at Indianapolis than anybody in the history of the 500, Scott Dixon. But he gave it away on pit road on the final pit stop in a rare mistake that you wouldn't expect from the Iceman. It harkens back to Juan Pablo Montoya at the Brickyard 400 a couple of times driving for Ganassi, giving away the Brickyard 400. Um, might be one of the worst mistakes of Scott Dixon's legendary career. He had the race basically on lock, and based on the speed that Pato O'Ward, who finished second, had late, he could have probably held him off there. Alex Palou got screwed by the caution. I'm trying to remember which wreck it was. I don't know if it was Renus VK caution, I think, when he hit the fence and didn't get on pit road, but he was already committed, so he couldn't turn back off and then had to come from tailback. But they had two of the fastest cars. Tony Kanaan had a fast car late in the race in what might possibly be his last Indianapolis 500. And then we'll get into the guy who was awarded Rookie of the Year as well. But it was a Ganassi month, and the Ganassi team won. And Marcus Ericsson gets to bask in the glory of being an Indianapolis 500 champion, first Swede since Kenny Breck in 1999, even though the Indianapolis Star called Marcus Ericsson Felix Rosenquist. So there's something with that. I guess copy editing and layout artists can't read or look at, Twitter or Facebook and see, or some other form of media to find out who the hell the winner of the Indianapolis 500 is. We'll get into all the big talking points with that. Plenty to get into. The Coca-Cola 600 saw Denny Hamlin lead 4 laps, but he led the most important one. He qualified on pole, had a good car, or had what we thought was going to be a continuation in Kansas, but it definitely wasn't for Toyota. Though there were Toyotas up there during the day. A lot of wrecks, a lot of close racing, close action. Kyle Larson, the defending race winner and defending series champion, was in line to possibly win this race after basically saying he had one of the worst races of his career for the first, I think, 300 laps of the race. And racing fellow USAC guy Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe continuing the rep of going for it, whether it comes through or not. And yet again, it didn't come through. But he's disappointed. We'll get into that as well in his execution of the move. But it's the best run that the 14 team has had in a month and a half. And the 4 car finished third. So Kevin Harvick was rousted from slumber. A lot of crashing, longest race ever in the history of NASCAR. But it might have been the best Coca-Cola 600 there's been in, I mean, Josh says a decade. It has to be at least 15 years, if maybe longer, since that I can remember a 600.
Yeah, it's probably true
So
since
this one,
2007.
yeah, I mean, so we'll get into all that. I mean, it was definitely interesting. A lot of action, a lot of destruction, and yeah, we'll get into the roundup with Formula 2 at Monaco, which was a good weekend there for Felipe Drogovic, continues his domination. MotoGP and Moto2 are at Mugello. Joe Roberts had a great ride to finish second in the Moto2 race. Pecco Bagnaia goes and wins, but Fabio Quartararo finishes second to consolidate his points lead. There's some news in MotoGP that's come out today, so we'll get into that. IMSA will be racing at Detroit. It'll be the DPIs and the GTD category, so it won't be a big field, but it'll be a solid one. Formula E will be making their first appearance in Indonesia this coming weekend. Rally Italy for the World Rally Championship coming up as well. We'll preview the Detroit Grand Prix IndyCar race, the last one that'll be on Belle Isle, because they'll be going back to the city streets of Detroit like they were back in the 80s when they took over the same circuit that Formula One used to race on prior to that. Then the Cup and Trucks Cup will make their debut at Gateway this coming weekend, so that'll be an interesting race considering what these cars have been doing on flatter tracks. So what will this car do? I think the shifting might make it a little bit better. Trucks will be there. Obviously, we talked about trucks briefly. You can get into that in the preview for the truck race as well from Charlotte. We were talking about it during the show the last show, and then Xfinity will make their debut at Portland International Race. So the trucks ran there a couple times back in the day, but now this will be the Xfinity Series running at Portland for a first time. I know Winston West ran there back in the day too, so that'll be interesting. Road course ringers, but it'll be an opportunity basically for AJ Allmendinger to go and get a win, I would think, but we'll get into all that. Josh will talk the sim game coming off of the Indy 500 win. How do you go and add to that? How do you go and do something even better? Is Le Mans on the table? We got to see. We'll see what Josh says here later on for that, and then we'll close the deal. So let's start with Indy 500. Ganassi dominated the month. The McLaren team showed up on Sunday for sure, especially their newly re-signed driver, Patricio O'Ward, and Felix Rosenqvist, who basically they were saying that he's racing for a ride, which I would venture to say he should be because he's been pretty god awful. Um, I mean, you're going to sign Alexander Rossi to run for them here starting next year, and I figure that's to go and replace Pato O'Ward. I said it on Grid Talk yesterday in the post race, considering how bad Daniel Ricciardo has been doing, that they should be looking at Pato O'Ward, though even the race, Ed Straw, legendary reporter, is talking about Colton Herta ahead of that, but I don't know. That's something to be seen. But in the end, it came down to Marcus Ericsson, Pato O'Ward, but Scott Dixon dominated the race and screwed up. Townsend Bell literally called it. And then by the time Dixon's exiting pit road, the penalty comes and it's like, oh my goodness, this whole race has slipped on its lid. It was one race. It was him and Pato O'Ward for most of the day, or him, Pato for most of the day. And then that flipped the script, Josh. And Marcus Ericsson was there and just the sneaky Swede, as Hinch called him, snuck one through and took the Husky Chocolate number 8 to victory lane and wins $3.1 million based on the reports they had on motorsport.com. So a prolific day for a man who ran in Formula One for many years and never really got any rewards from it, spent a lot of money there, and now has won his third career IndyCar race and probably has guaranteed himself long-term employment at Chip Ganassi Racing, Josh.
Yeah, for Marcus Ericsson, I mean, this is a huge victory, and he's been up there throughout the month. Wasn't the fastest uh, uh, out of the Chip Ganassi bunch, but he was one of the fastest, and it was hard not to count him out. But we were thinking of Alex Palou, and Scott Dixon, and even Tony Kanaan and Jimmy Johnson as guys that would contend, and we weren't sure about Marcus Ericsson. He's kind of like Hinchcliffe said, the sneaky guy, sneaky Swede. And he was able to kind of take advantage of misfortune by Scott Dixon, go out and at first it was Pato O'Ward and McLaren and Felix Rosenqvist, another Swede that had potential shot at victory, but then he had better speed on the final run before the last caution. Jimmy Johnson crashing there and had a he was able to take the lead, and then the final restart he was able to snake through the front and back straight and keep fend off Pato O'Ward from taking the lead. And Pato probably could have had a chance if he would have just held onto it in turn one on the final lap on the outside of Ericsson. But I think he just decided to play it smart and go for the points lead, because obviously it's a risky move to go on the outside like that when you don't have quite the speed or the grip, especially they were lacking the wicker that a lot of other teams had added on. They went really low on downforce, and so they probably or he probably could have hit the wall there. But Ericsson, has quietly been actually one of the best drivers in IndyCar since the 2021 Indy 500. I mean, if you kind of look at his statistics, he's actually outscored Dixon and Palou since then. Um, since that race last year and going all the way to the 2022 Indy 500 yesterday. And it's kind of crazy how it's all kind of happened, because the first win in IndyCar that he had was, Will Power had the issue at the Detroit Grand Prix, couldn't get restarted after the red flag, and basically that race fell into his lap there and had a chance to win that one. And then, of course, Grand Prix at Nashville, crashed and literally got projected into the air and somehow survived that race and did not have somehow was able to still have a race winning car even after getting launched literally into the air at that race. And he got those 2 wins last year, but quietly he's been outscoring Palou and Dixon since then, and now
Yeah.
he's got the 2022 Indy 500, and his name is in immortality now.
Yeah, the part you left out on the Nashville deal is Colton Herta dominated the entire weekend and crashed by himself while leading, had a huge lead. And once they cleared that up, the guy who picked up the pieces was Marcus Ericsson. And now his two teammates, much more heralded teammates, uh, one of the greatest race car drivers ever, and Scott Dixon made a very rare mistake. Um, I'm curious to see what he's going to do this weekend. I think he's going to be really angry. And I fundamentally believe that now the only way that he feels any better is one, he's going to go and win somewhere, whether it's this weekend or he's going to want to win immediately as soon as possible. They have a break after this, so I think that'll probably drive him to go even harder. And I think he wants number 7 now because it's like I had the car, I had the month, I'm going to be in the record books as the fastest 4-lap average for a pole sitter in Indy history. I led more than half the race. I mean, he led
He led
95
95,
or not
so
more, or sorry,
almost
so
half.
95. My fault, on the math. But he was up there. It was him and I mean, you look at it for the first 30 laps of the race, it was him or Palou. Then after what is it for? It was the Dixon Palou. Yeah, it was Dixon Palou until lap 60, and then through or lap like just under the last 70 for 70 laps, and then there was a wreck. I think it was the 77 crash. I guess was where Palou got screwed up there because I'm trying to figure out where it went wrong for him. I thought it was when Renus VK hit the wall, but it is what it is for those two guys. Marcus Ericsson takes his third career win. One of the fastest, I guess, one of the fastest Indy 500s ever in history. So that's something. It's been that way here recently. The last few years, these races have been a lot faster, mainly because they're a lot cleaner than back in the day. A lot less attrition in that sense. Ericsson takes the points lead because of the double points. Pato O'Ward finishes 1.79 seconds behind and moves up to second in points, 13 points behind Ericsson. Antoine Kanaan gets a podium, his best finish in the Indianapolis 500 since his win 9 years ago. Felix Rosenqvist gets a fourth place finish, also leads, or Felix, did he? No, he didn't lead, but he was up there most of the day. Now moves up to ninth in points. Alexander Rossi from 20th finished fifth in the lead Andretti Autosport car. Connor Daly, 6th. He led laps again this year. Had a good car there earlier in the race. He was swapping the lead with Scott Dixon there just before halfway, but then got back in traffic, really didn't have anything. Elio Castro-Neves gets a 7th place finish, starting 27th in his drive for 5. First attempt, comes out 7th, gets past his teammate Simon Pagenaud, the former Indy 500 winner. He's in 8th in points. Alex Palou recovers to finish 9th. He is 3rd in points, 14 points behind his teammate Marcus Ericsson and 1 behind Pato O'Ward. Root Beer Floathead finished 10th. Juan Pablo Monterrier finished 11th. And so that's the top 11 there. J.R. Hildebrand, 12th. I guess we can get into some of these other people. It kind of goes. We talked about how the McLaren team, all 3 McLaren cars, finished in the top third of the field. They were one of the lead Chevy teams. The Ed Carpenter team had much better with Renus VK and Ed Carpenter had great qualifying pace. Renus VK, we really don't know what would have happened with him. He was up front early, but then he wrecked because of that the headwind in turn 2, which affected multiple people. yesterday, Josh, and then he could have played a big part in this race, but we will never know because he wrecked 40 laps into it. Ed Carpenter got a penalty, and I think he had some issues on pit road too, which
Yeah, he couldn't get
didn't
refired
help.
there.
Yeah, he couldn't get refired, so that screwed him up. But Connor was the one to carry the load after not having the qualifying pace uh, during the week before, but he had a good race car. But then once you get past those teams, the Ganassis, and you look at Andretti Autosport, you look at Penske, of course. Those two teams, I mean, you can get in others. They mentioned Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan on Racer, but you look at some of these other big teams, wasn't that pretty. You know, like Takuma Sato had pace all month, and then in the race just didn't really have anything. David Malukas ended up being the highest finishing rookie on the day. I mean, Rossi covered for, I guess, Roman Grosjean, who was running well before he wiped himself out. Um, yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing. I mean, you get past Dixon and Pillow and what happened with them. Um, Award and Rosenquist, what they were able to do, and especially Rosenquist under pressure to be able to show up and have a great run. Um, but when you look at some of these other big teams, really wasn't that good this month, or the month of May wasn't all that profitable. I mean, I guess in the end of Andretti, Herta had the great run in the Indy Grand Prix. Rex his primary car in carb day practice and had a car that was undrivable and had to park uh, yesterday, continuing his bad luck in the Indianapolis 500, losing a lot of ground, falling to 10th in points, which, you know, it's kind of the same pattern that's been the case ever since he's been in IndyCar. He lose ton of points in the double points race. He probably will go out and win a couple, 2, 3 races after this, but it won't be enough. Um, it's that's I think that's the big storyline outside. One of the big storylines outside of that is those big teams really didn't have anything to show for it outside of Alexander Rossi, who does really well in this race when he's given the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean the all the big teams, they're out to lunch. We were expecting a lot more from, from Penske. This is their track. Will Power at least made it into the Fast 12, the previous week, and in the race, didn't really have anything. He was MIA. I think Joseph Newgarden. I think there was some points where he was up in the top 10, but again, I mean, they just could never find a way to get up, to be a significant contender in this race. So, um, the Chevys, outside of Ed Carpenter Racing, yeah, they were definitely out to lunch. Uh, Aero McLaren SP, of course, obviously they ended up being the top contending teams in this race, but the big team Chevys, of course, like Penske, they out to lunch and didn't compete really in this race. And then, I think the only big team, I guess, that you could say is a multi-car team that was at least somewhat competitive was Meyer Shank with Elio Castroneves and Simon Pagenaud. They were both quietly up into the top 10, as the race progressed, especially Elio coming back from 27th spot. A lot of focus was on him, of course, going for the drive for five there. And Elio ends up finishing in seventh, so 7 or 6 spots short of where he wanted to finish in this race to get that fifth win. But still, a pretty impressive run to go, finish 20 spots above where you started, and especially the way that this race is going. And you talk about like turn two, of course, the hot day in Indianapolis and a lot of wind, and usually turn two is the trouble spot. We've seen in the past where drivers lose it off of that corner, and it ended up being the case today or on Sunday with a lot of the crashes happening off that corner. Just drivers just losing it and hitting the wall, and like Jimmy Johnson, like Renus VK, Scott McLaughlin. also lost it, although he lost it in turn three, and then had probably the worst crash of them all. Pretty heavy impact there. So we're uh, hopefully he's okay and everything after that heavy impact, but still a lot of the accidents off turn two, and so it's a hard corner to master there. That's always been kind of the trouble spot, I think. Turn two and I think turn four is probably the hardest two corners to master. Especially with the directional changes and the construction of everything with the suites and then the grandstands in turn four there. But overall the Carpenter cars, Connor Daly, of course, at one point I think Scott Dixon was wanting to save fuel and then let Connor Daly go, and crowd was going wild for him. Uh, of course, Indiana native, local native. People want him to win, and he had a good pace, but just didn't have enough to really get up there when it counted. And then you mentioned Rossi. Rossi also qualified poorly, and he was able to slowly make his way up there. And I thought maybe he might make one of his late charges, kind of similar to 2019 and 2018, where he was able to kind of zip his way through the field and make moves, but just didn't have quite the pace needed to get up into the top uh, part of the top five. Obviously, he got up to fifth, sixth place, but wasn't able to make much headway after that. And of course, the field got spread out on the last green flag pit stop before the final yellow, and of course the field was spread out pretty thin, and we thought Marcus Ericsson had it in the bag, and of course teammate Jimmy Johnson goes and crashes. And I mean, I guess we talked about Jimmy's coming over from NASCAR, and we think he's going to be able to compete in everything, but IndyCar goes and kind of does a little bit of imitation by NASCAR, trying to get a green flag finish there, and throwing the red flag. And we've seen in the past where caution with that many laps to go in an IndyCar race, they don't end up restarting it. Obviously, it takes a long time to pick up the mess from these crashes, and with the carbon fiber pieces and everything kind of projectiling all over the track whenever you crash, and it's a big cleanup. But I guess on one hand, give credit to IndyCar for wanting to give everybody a green finish, first race back from COVID, of course, and exciting finish and everything. But then on the other hand, it does open the door into the future, I guess, for um, potential more. I don't want to say manipulation, but you know, I guess influencing the finishes and artificially inducing a close finish. But at the same time, I mean, I don't think they'll ever like stoop to the level that NASCAR has done with green white checkers and stage racing and points like that. I think the way that they have it set up is fine, and certainly acceptable, because it was still pretty good finish, and the same driver that would have won had the caution stayed yellow for that period, which was Marcus Ericsson. At least the same driver came out and won, and we were able to see him defend the position. You can argue Marcus Ericsson going below the pit commit line, coming to the white flag. You could argue maybe that was a little out of hand there, and maybe deserved a penalty for that. But he's able to still defend his position, and definitely kind of takes cues from Simon Pagenaud back in 2019 when he was weaving all over the track trying to defend Rossi in that race. So kind of a similar finish here there, but definitely a great finish that we saw. Regardless, and it was definitely a really entertaining race with a lot of lead changes, like we saw going into turn one, going into turn three, and we were able to see a lot of passing in those two corners. So, great Indianapolis 500, and it's a hard race to win, like we saw with Scott Dixon. And if you make a mistake, you have to make it at the beginning of the race and be able to have time to recover. It's especially even with Scott Dixon having a great race car, a dominant race car like that, it's so hard to recover from a mistake. Passing's at a premium, yellow flags are at a premium. So unlike Kyle Larson in the NASCAR race, of course, they had a long time to be able to come back and get put themselves in position to win. In this race, it's very hard to be able to put yourself in position to win after making a mistake like that. And Scott Dixon, just one mistake, and that cost him the race. He was perfect everywhere else, and then as soon as you saw the smoke when he went on to pit in the last lap or on the last pit stop, you knew that there was a mistake there. And then of course they nailed him for speeding on pit road. So definitely definitely a mistake there that he wants back, and we'll have to see what kind of driver, like you said, Scott Dixon comes out. I mean, he's always going to be the Iceman, but of course, maybe the ice was beginning to melt there a little bit, cracking under pressure, trying to get his second Indy 500. But we'll see what kind of driver he is coming out of that mistake, and if he goes on a tear, tries to win the championship later in the year, we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think that's where we have to see what happens with him, the response he has after such a rare mistake. The Penske guys, too, how do they respond now winning at their boss's house? New Garden yet again. Now it's, I don't know how many, I have to think it's like 10 years, 10 or 11 starts for him at Indianapolis, still hasn't won the Indy 500. Um, it's got to be grinding on him, knowing he drives for Penske and he hasn't been able to win the one that matters most to him. It shows how tough of a race it is to win when Scott Dixon's only won it once. And that's where it's like once you get past one win and you get into like two-time winners or three and four, like that's where you get to, it means so much more how those drivers are held in such high regard. I mean, the fact that Scott Dixon is still going to be held in high regard, even though he had that error. But we definitely will see what happens with that. I mean, glad in regards to the accidents, we're talking about that. Jimmy Johnson's wreck was like similar to Jeff Andretti's crash in 1992 and Mario Andretti's crash in the race itself. Then you had like Nelson Piquet. But the difference is, of course, you have safer barriers, the technology that they've moved the drivers back further. That's also helped. And those two things are why Jimmy Johnson got out of the car. Um, the other crashes, the rear end collisions or rear collisions for uh, what's it called, Rinus VK and Callum Ilott and Romain Grosjean. All I think were because of the wind you're talking about in regards to how the turn is and the turn in and how you have to adjust that relative to the other turns. And then Scott McLaughlin's wreck was a double wreck because he had the one hit and then couldn't break and he slow himself down and had a second hit. And those are usually really bad, but he was able to get out, so that was good. Though for all those teams that got wrecked there, not a long amount of time. They'll have to be at Detroit this weekend to get back to racing um, before they have a break, so they'll have to respond quickly. Going into Formula One, this past weekend was, of course, the Monaco Grand Prix, and Sergio Perez comes through with the victory. His third career win or fourth career win, I forget what they said. Yeah, it was third career win. So another guy who has a third career win, and of course the biggest one of his career. And Red Bull, they didn't have the ultimate pace of Ferrari, I think, in one lap or maybe even in race, but they had better strategy, and they were able to go and win what was generally for the first hour and 10 minutes was a cluster by the FIA and their poor handling of the weather situation and how to start the race. They should have probably started the damn thing and let the teams dictate what happened instead of waiting on weather or hoping weather would clear or whatever. And then the lack of clarity between the stewards and what they wanted to do. We talked about it on Grid Talk. It made no sense. If the fans don't know and the media doesn't know, and you have the freaking people that are announcing the racing, why are we sitting here? Why don't we just race? I think it's a fundamental problem. But for Sergio Perez, it doesn't really matter. He has the victory. Carlos Sainz finished second, Max Verstappen finished third, and Charles Leclerc finished fourth. And it's probably still not happy about how that took place. Um, Ends up losing more points, as I said, um, to the to Max Verstappen. So that's not great. The win was it Sergio Perez won by 1.154 seconds over Carlos Sainz, 64 laps. They're scheduled for 78. Of course, they took a lap off, but then there was a time limit. So, based on the time limit, the 2 hour time limit, they only finished 64 laps yesterday, which was enough to get the 3/4 of the race done to give out full points. George Russell finished fifth, but almost got passed by his BFF, one of his BFFs, Lando, who was on new tires. Fernando Alonso held up the entire field. And basically, then once he was like, "Oh, I can go now," went away by 4 seconds over Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri Bottas ninth, Sebastian Vettel 10th. Pierre Gasly, I gave him a tie for driver of the day because the fact is his team screwed him over on Saturday in qualifying. If they had allowed him to go out ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, he probably would have been in the top 5 or 6, and that could have been considering how fast he was and some of the overtakes he made during that race yesterday. He could have been a player in the race yesterday, possibly. Not, I mean, maybe not to win, but to get a top 5 or a top 6 finish. Um, go through the rest of those. Yeah, Albon had to retire. Mick Schumacher had a huge wreck, and his car split at the swimming pool complex, and then Kevin Magnussen had a engine issue. So yeah, Checo wins. Red Bull has better strategy. Ferrari doesn't, and Charles Leclerc loses more ground to Verstappen, and then you add FIA's inability to run a race and looking more like NASCAR than a proper motorsport entity.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting decision by Ferrari with how they decided to pit. They left him out for 2 laps, thinking that they, can maintain the gap, I guess, to the Red Bulls and, Sergio Perez, but then, they left him out there on a slower tire, or not as a quick tire with the intermediates, and then, uh, Perez, switched back to the regular tire and made enough time, and was able to make up the gap significantly, and then that cost them the race. And there was times when we thought that maybe Carlos Sainz would get around Sergio Perez, but ultimately he was never able to do that. And you could kind of still see the pace difference, especially when they were driving through the tunnel going into the chicane at Monaco. You would think that as close as what Carlos Sainz was able to get to Sergio Perez, he was going to be able to pass him, but he could only get up to right up to the gearbox basically, and could never muscle his way around him there. Even with the tire difference, you could see the tire wear when they zoomed in on the cameras onto Sergio Perez's tires. You could see the uneven wear on the tires, but even then, without that, still able to pull off the win, which shows the speed and the pace of the Red Bull car, especially on this track compared to the Ferraris. But The Ferraris, once again, they threw it away, which might be becoming a theme now with Ferrari this season. They've already thrown away a couple of races, and now once again they've thrown away this race, and possibly the biggest win of both Carlos Sainz, who's never won in Formula One, or Charles Leclerc, who's never won this race, and certainly this is probably the race that he would want to win because not only one is it the crown jewel of Formula One races, but also he's from Monaco, and so when you win at your home track, place you grew up in, it's very special and everything. So that's a huge loss for Leclerc there, and now Leclerc has lost the points lead to Verstappen, albeit not by much, but still he's lost the points lead, and now has to be able to they've got to figure out a way to get the points lead back and get back in front of the drivers championship, because if they keep continuing these mistakes, the championship's going to get away from them. And this also welcomes Sergio Perez, at least for now, into the championship conversation. So we're going to see if Red Bull can get both of their drivers an opportunity to finish in 1-2 in the point standings at the end of the year, and have two drivers possibly competing for the championship, which should be interesting to see with teammates and the decision making in politics that go with deciding which teammate gets to have the most success on the day on any race. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, the race wasn't all that compelling other than that. But of course, it is Monaco with how close things can get, but you still aren't able to make it pass. I mean, we saw at the end of the race, before the last caution or the last yellow with Schumacher, you could literally throw a blanket between all four of those cars at parts of that racetrack, and but never could any of them jump position, especially the Ferraris couldn't jump position on either Verstappen or on Sergio Perez. So uh, Perez able to get the biggest win of his career, and now we get to see what Ferrari has to do in response to um, Red Bull as we go the rest of the way, especially next week at Baku, or in 2 weeks at Baku, which is a pretty high speed racetrack, and we're going to see what the pace difference really is like between the Ferraris and the Red Bulls there.
Yeah, I'm just reading on the article on motorsport.com about Ferrari and the errors and where they came from or how they came, and trying to do a full investigation. It's just, well, it's Ferrari. Um, I mean, if I'm Charles Leclerc, I would be livid, to say the least. When it's when what I mean, like you said, Josh, like it's its home Grand Prix. He's never finished the race. He's never finished in any form or car that he's driven there. Finally finishes. You had the car that probably should have won the race, and you finished fourth. And there's 15 points between the top three now. Verstappen has 3 wins this year, or 4 wins this year, 3 in a row. That was the first time he hadn't won since Australia. And he also won the sprint race, I think, too. That's why those points. Yeah, so he had won 4 consecutive rounds or whatever, if you want to really get that deep. He has a 9-point lead on Charles Leclerc. Sergio Perez is 15 points back. George Russell leads Carlos Sainz by a point because he scored in every round this year and hasn't finished worse than fifth in a regular race. Sainz gets his second career, or second of the season. And he's had 4 podiums so far. Lewis Hamilton is sixth in points, 3 top 5 finishes this year. One, and he's only 2 points ahead of Lando Norris, who's had 2 DNFs. Lewis Hamilton at Imola had a nightmare. That's why he scored no points through the whole entire weekend. Yeah, that was that brutal qualifying, and then he didn't even do anything in the sprint, and then was held up in a DRS train. Yeah. Lando's only 2 points behind him. Valtteri Bottas is 10 points behind him. So there is that. Their next race will be at Baku. So some progress was made by Mercedes, but right now it looks like it's just going to continue to be the same situation, Red Bull, Ferrari battle to see who's going to answer and do whatever they have to do for the world championship, both world championships, because Red Bull has a 36-point lead going into um, the next race in the constructors. So we'll get into the Coca-Cola 600, which was a really good, interesting race for sure. 5 hours, 16 minutes. So definitely long. Um, but Denny Hamlin becomes a two-time winner, third two-time winner of the season, and solidifies himself in the playoff. If the one win wasn't enough, which there's been now 11 winners, there's still only 11 winners right now. The second win, considering how far he is in points, he's 19th in overall points. But because of his second win, it doesn't matter anymore. Ross Chastain, William Byron, and Hamlin are the ones that have 2 wins. Clyde is the overall points leader, and we'll get into all that here in a minute. But Denny Hamlin wins the Coca-Cola 600 for the first time. He didn't ever win the Indianapolis Brickyard 400, but he's won all the other 3 major races, and if you think about the Winston Million, he's won all the Winston Million races. I think he's won the Bristol Night race, which people consider like that 5th major race too. So Hamlin has 48 wins, and he's won all the big ones. Kyle Busch finishes 2nd, Kevin Harvick 3rd, Chase Briscoe 4th, Christopher Bell 5th, Tyler Reddick 6th, Ricky Stenhouse, Richard 7th, Michael McDowell 8th, Kyle Larson 9th, and Alex Bowman 10th. Wow, Harrison Burton finished 11th. I think that's got to be his best finish of his career. Helped by wrecks and crap. Ross Chastain led the most laps. Why are they only showing stage 1, stage 2? Didn't they have 3 stages? Yeah. So,
I don't know. The
yeah. So
results
the
on Racing Reference have the top 10 for
3
stage 3,
stages.
which that was
Okay.
Ross Chastain winning that one, and Chase Briscoe was
Yeah.
second in that one too.
Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at the one on J Ski, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
So,
the official one.
yeah. So he won one stage. Ross Chastain finished second in one stage to his teammate. So big amount of stage points for him yesterday, but unfortunately he didn't get the finish he wanted, and neither did his teammate Daniel Suarez, who probably had one of the best, if not the best, car. He got wrecked late, assisted by Chase there. That was one of the late incidents there. It was it was lap 347. That was where Chris Buescher flipped. And then Clyde won stage 1, but then got knocked out in a crash, or crashed by himself and knocked himself, and then also got involved in the ensuing wreck on the restart, the next crash that took out Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch, and others. So there was 18 cautions for 90 laps. Oh God.
Almost a quarter of the
Nearly
race.
almost a quarter of the race run under yellow. Of course, you add the stupid stage breaks. You have to have the stupid stop in the middle of the race thing too. That probably added at least 20, um, probably half an hour to the race, and added, because every, like, you look at the stage, that's 5 laps for when they do stage brake cautions, 6 laps on stage 2, then stage 3 was 5, so it takes them 5 laps during stage breaks, which is ridiculous. They need to really look into that, but that's for another day, I guess. It's part of the reason why road course races take for fucking ever, because they don't know what a local yellow is, and then they insist on doing stages on road courses. We're going to find that out next week during Snoroma. Um, but yeah, Denny Hamlin didn't really have a car that you would have thought. He led 15, says he led 15 laps. I heard he led 4, but I don't know. I guess that was a mistake somewhere. I don't know where he led 4 laps. He has led 15 laps. Got stage points twice, 2 stage points, but in the end, he won. He was up front when it counted, and that's all that really matters. He led, what is that, 6 laps there. Kyle passed him for 1. He led 7 of the last, what is it, 8 laps of the race, and he led the most important one. Hamlin led early, and he led when it counted. So credit to Hamlin. He's locked in for sure. He has to fix the issues that his actual team has with one of their drivers, since they can't get out of their own way. They're monkeys fucking footballs the way they handle things. So he has to go and fix that deal at the 23 team, but Denny's in the playoffs, and he has a chance to possibly go and get that elusive championship that he's been waiting on all these years, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the biggest wins of Denny Hamlin's career, winning the Coke 600. And, he's won Daytona 3 times now. He's won Darlington, the Southern 500, multiple times as well. And then this one's kind of the other crown jewel race in NASCAR that he's yet to win. And actually, I mean, if you think about it, I think he has all the crown jewels now. If you think about the traditional crown jewels in NASCAR, which is the Daytona 500, the Winston 500, which I think was in May, and then it flipped, to the fall or whatever, and then because he won the
Yeah, it
fall,
flipped to the fall
yeah,
in the year, I think, in 99 or
yeah,
2000,
whichever one it
and
was,
that,
but yeah,
yeah.
he,
I always remember it as a Winston
yeah,
500, and then the EA Sports 500, and that was the Winston Million race. Yep.
yeah, yes, and so the fall one was always the Winston Million race. Once they moved to the fall and everything, and so he's won that race obviously the 2 years ago when he went under the yellow line to win that one, but and has now won the Coke in Darlington as well, and has now won the Coke 600. So now he's technically achieved all the, they call it the Grand Slam in NASCAR, and I so if you go by those races traditionally, he's won all of them now. So yeah, he's a Grand Slam winner now in NASCAR, and he's got to have a championship, which he'll definitely have a shot at later in the year once they start the NASCAR playoffs and everything. But yeah, I mean, didn't really, he was there at the front at the start, and then he was there at the end. And I think he was one of the guys that took 4 tires at the end of the race, the last caution or second to last caution. And even if Austin Dillon hadn't crashed coming off of turn 4, making contact with Kyle Larson. Off that on that lap, it looked like Danny Hamlin was probably on track to take the lead from Austin Dillon there. But Austin went and crashed and everything, which not really his fault. They kind of just ran out of room on the racetrack and everything, and they all came together. And then Denny ended up becoming the beneficiary of all of that. So Hamlin was able to fend off Kyle Busch on the ensuing restart, and then takes home the victory in the Coke 600. And yeah, it's the longest race ever, but honestly, it's probably one of the better races that we've seen in 15 years at this racetrack. Probably going back to 2007 in this race, when that one was a pretty wild one with a lot of crashes and a lot of wrecks that happened in that one. And uh, not quite the same finish there, but still a lot of things happened in that race. And this one was fairly eventful as well. And we saw Kyle Larson go from back to front and spin out go on fire, and multiple crew penalties. We heard uh, crew chief Cliff Daniels give one of the best pep talks ever in racing. And granted, NASCAR's format with stage racing kind of gave credence to give some of the terminology, because, like, yeah, in the first half we sucked. In the second half, we're going to be better off than what we were in the first half. So let's go. And I mean, it was still a good speech though, regardless. But uh, Larson, came back and was able to lead the up until the final laps, but then Chase Briscoe was setting up to be a classic finish. He was slowly closing in on Kyle Larson, and then basically made the same type of move that he tried to make at Bristol Dirt Race, but spun out, didn't take out Kyle Larson, but still spun out. So, Chase Briscoe's gonna, be really good here. I mean, he's already won one race, but if he can, figure it out and close on some of these races that he's missed, he's gonna be up there. So, just got to be a little bit more patient. I know you're Chase Briscoe and everything, so fan there. So, it's gonna be here coming up soon, with how he's driving. Maybe not this year, but certainly in the future for sure. But it was a lot of things that did happen. I think, um, Bubba Wallace was another driver that could have had a good run, and then they kind of messed up on the after the caution where they had the big crash, and they were trying to save tires so they wouldn't have to pit. I think, and that was going to be their strategy, was everybody pit after the stage break, and then they would possibly cycle themselves back to the front. But they screwed up on, I guess, their pace, and then NASCAR threw them out because they were technically a part of that big crash, and then I guess they ran too slow for the driver performance policy or vehicle performance policy, whatever, and which I think is stupid, but I guess that's the rules, and they ended up finishing out of the race, and they probably had a top five car, if not a race winning car there. So poor finish for that team after what they had a good run. And then for Toyota's, besides Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch was also really good. And then he spun out early on in the race and is basically clawing his way back after that, and it was up there at the end. And then Denny Hamlin was able to shake him off there in turn one and two on the final lap. So good comeback for Kyle Busch there. Kevin Harvick, we mentioned him earlier, and I talked about him in the preview leading up to this race. Kevin Harvick, possibly, hey, look out for him. Hasn't really run that well all year, but could be somebody up there at the end. And didn't win, but ended up taking a solid uh, third place finish there. And so that was a good finish for him. Tyler Reddick, had a chance once again to possibly win a race, and didn't end up happening for him. He spun out as well. So a lot of guys that spun out that could have won the race and that ended up coming back to finish in the top 10. Like Larson got crashed on the final restart, next to the final restart, and still finished ninth. Briscoe, who spun out right there, ended up coming back to finish fourth. Reddick finishing sixth. So yeah, a lot of guys involved in incidents. Kyle Busch spun out at the beginning of the race and come back to finish second. So it does tell you the volatility, I guess, of this new car and the tire that goes with it. The volatility that occurred in this race was something else. But this outside of Texas, it looks like this car had been delivering on the mile and a half tracks, the bigger tracks. So we'll see if they make an adjustment to the short track package. But yeah, definitely a great race this year, and probably one of the better races we've seen in a long time from Charlotte and this year's Coke 600.
Yeah, it was a positive. I mean, getting into races at Charlotte and SMI tracks have not been great over recent years with the Gen 6 and even with the Gen 5 car. But, this race, with the amount of mistakes people are making in a 600-mile race, albeit you're talking about 150-mile, I guess, stages instead of a 600-mile race. I think that's where part of why a lot of these guys are able to come back, because of the resets. In the past, if you had the mistakes that they had, probably some of them wouldn't have been able to recover. Maybe Denny Hamlin wouldn't have been able to get back up there. So all that is in play, but Hamlin goes and gets that big one. He essentially has the Grand Slam, Super Slam. He's won basically everywhere. I'm trying to think of where he hasn't won, really. He's not a prolific road racer. I think he's won Sonoma, but he hasn't won Watkins Glen. And now there's so many damn road courses, it don't matter anymore. Um, but giving himself a chance to win this championship now, for sure, which is that's what he's holding. I mean, now it's trying to get to 50 wins because his next win will tie him with Tony Stewart, and then 2 wins will get him to 50, which is Rusty Wallace, Ned Jarrett, and Junior Johnson, which is a huge number. I mean, the amount of wins that Tony gave away or had a chance at in the big ones and never got them would have had him well past that, but that's a different thing for a different time. But Denny Hamlin has a chance now to possibly get to that number 50, which is a huge achievement for somebody who's in the latter part of his career, of course.
Yeah, I think we got disconnected on the recording, so I need to I'm gonna
It shows that we're
yeah,
recording,
I
though.
got a message saying that it got disconnected and that you have to say to make it join again. So
Okay.
I'm gonna take the audio. I'll send you the audio part because it happened while I was talking and I just saw the message just now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take the audio and give it back to you. Like I'll just split the audio from my end where it chopped off and I can give it to you if that makes
Okay.
sense. Yeah. So you don't have to go back and start over on that end. But let me hold on. Hold on. Mm,
Now
okay.
recording.
Yeah, so we had Denny Hamlin go, and he's won all the big races. He's I think he's won the Super Slam if we were really getting into it, in regards to what he's won at Bristol. He's won basically everywhere. He's trying to get to 50 wins, past Tony, um, which is his next target there at 49 wins, and then 50 wins to join legends and Hall of Famers and Ned Jarrett, Junior Johnson, and Rusty Wallace. So that'll be his next goal, and then of course the championship is what's on her next horizon, I guess, because he's in. Still 11 winners so far this year. 2 guys that are outside of the top, top 20 in points if they didn't have the win. Briscoe finishes fourth yesterday. Best run he's had in a while. He'd be outside of the playoff if it weren't for his win either. So there you go. So there's 3 guys that are outside points wise. The actual cutoff situation has Tyler Reddick up by 8 points over Eric Almirola. Austin Dillon is 18th. Eric Jones is 7 points behind Austin Dillon, 21 behind Almirola, and Daniel Suarez is in 20th. But you look at Reddick, Suarez, the way they've run this year, and even to an extent Eric Jones and Austin Dillon, they all could be drivers that could possibly win. Uh, Ryan Blaney is the best driver hadn't won a race this year. He's fourth in points. He's going to win more than likely. Truex is up there points wise, so those guys are pretty good. I think if it gets kind of crazy, those 2 guys are probably going to make it in. Bell is the first person I think that kind of has to worry. Kevin Harvick would be in that too, but um, we'll find out an opportunity this coming weekend at a brand new track for the Cup Series. What will happen there at Gateway with this car, since it hasn't exactly been great on flatter racetracks. What will they do? How will it work out? Uh, Something we will see coming up. So yeah, I mean, the other thing, I guess, I mean, there's two other things. I mean, the Trackhouse cars, yet again. I mean, I think it's been a common theme for us. We've talked about it here on the show where they've been running fast all year, and they proved it once again. Led 200, probably around 240 laps. Both of them had a chance to win, which is a positive for sure, and it shows what this next gen car has brought to the table for them. And I think even to a lesser extent than them is RCR, because they brought them back into the fold. It hasn't helped Ford all that much, though. You could say Michael McDowell actually got a top 10 finish, which it's Michael McDowell, so how the hell did that happen? But you know, he wouldn't be doing that on any track other than a super speedway. So there is that. Um, the some of the other people there having a chance. I think the one issue there was with that flip for Busher and how long it took them to get the car
Yeah, that was a long
back.
time.
Yeah, that's not good, especially if it was on fire. There's been issues with that before. Austin Dillon, of course, hitting the catch fence at the five in the Coke Zero 400 a few years ago and ripping the whole car apart. And they flipped it over, and he was able to get out or whatever. I think they flipped. I don't know, but they had pit crew run out and help him out, and they turned him over. That's something that has to be looked into. But I mean, otherwise, racing itself was good. A lot of drivers were up there, as you'd mentioned. Lead changes aplenty. Um, it's a positive, considering what cookie cutter racing had become and the sheer amount of them to where we are now. I think it's a shows that this car and with this, hopefully they'd give them more horsepower. I wish they would. Then it would be even better. But then I don't think Badger can make a good enough tire for that. But that's beside the point.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the Chris Buescher flip there, and yeah, it was definitely a long time that they had to wait. And you have to wonder, I mean, yeah, if the car was on fire or something like that, I feel like obviously that does warrant, an emergency situation where they would definitely have to respond quickly. And, you mentioned Austin Dillon and his crash many years ago at Daytona. And I mean, that was before, when they had the old safety crews, and now they have kind of this mixed match safety crew between AMR's safety team, which I guess is, the same people who do the IndyCar stuff, and some track personnel that the tracks hire. And um, I don't know exactly the specifics of it, but yeah, this response is definitely unwarranted, and um, should definitely be a lot quicker than that. And I mean, I guess maybe the other thing is because like he immediately was able to lower the window net down, which is the general signal that he's okay and everything. So the fact that, I mean, he was okay and everything, he was good, but it's just like it takes a long time to get out. And I guess even in an upside down car, it's still pretty hard to get unbuckled and everything. And the we've seen the past drivers been able to uh, unbuckle themselves in an upside down car. I think Ryan Newman 2003 with his flips that he had in Daytona and everything, being able to get out of an upside down car. But still, it's a tough deal to get out of. And when you are stuck like that and you're upside down for several minutes, it does bring a lot of anxiety and being able to get released. So it took too long, and then they had to basically flip the car back over for him to get out, and even that took very long with the process they had with the truck and the tow truck trying to use the I don't know what the device is, but they were able to turn the car over. And I mean, granted, they did it, fairly safely, and it's, you definitely don't want to do that too fast because obviously you could hurt somebody doing that. But yeah, the response has to be a lot quicker than that. But yeah, that was something that's going to be looked at, I'm sure. And then you mentioned Trackhouse Racing continue to dominate, and yeah, they've dominated this race, and they might be the team to beat on these mile-and-a-half tracks now, and maybe even on road courses. So we'll have to see coming forward what happens. Suarez continued to have bad luck, of course, getting taken out, which obviously led to the crash with Chris Buescher, flipping over, and you'll have to see if um, they can recover from that. And Suarez definitely has a car that he can win with now. So I think it's a matter of time for him to be able to get a win here in the Cup Series finally. And of course, Chastain, low key, might be the best driver in the Cup Series right now. Definitely him or William Byron, based on how statistics have worked out. And Chastain's done a really great job this year, and I don't think any of us could have seen that coming. So, the track house definitely, whatever they figured out over the off season, it's worked out, and I think the parity of this car has helped, and then also they've continued to improve their game, and they've gone from where they were at the beginning of the year. They didn't close, and granted, this race they didn't close either, but you can see the progress and just the amount of laps that they were able to lead tonight or on Sunday. That shows a lot of the progress they made on their program even this year, and we're going to continue to see that throughout the rest of the year. So yeah, I think both of them can make the playoffs later in the year, and should be a fun battle when we get to that point.
Yeah, I figure it'll be interesting. It'll be more interesting than it has been in recent years, getting in at least the first couple of rounds, I hope. They have enough cars in there. You have more than half the field, and uh, you basically have half the field in the playoff. Um, all the chartered cars are big, yeah, in that sense too. Essentially half the chartered cars that'll make the playoffs. Before we get into the roundup, I just had to put this in here because obviously the Xfinity race took place after we did our show, episode 116. So let's go and hit that here briefly. Josh Berry gets another win, second win of the season, fourth of his career. Led stage one, second in stage two. That was dominated in a sense by the uh, junior motorsports guys. Him and Justin Allgaier, two best cars, battled for a lot of the day. Uh, but Josh Berry gets another victory, solidifies himself as a title favorite. And Sam Mayer qualified on his first career pole. So there is that. Um, Gagson gave 3 out of the top 4 cars for Junior Motorsports and 4 out of the top 7. The only people that weren't in those cars was Ty Gibbs, who started tailback. You had Ryan Preece driving for BJ McLeod's team in a Stewart Haas prepared number 5, and then Daniel Hemrick, who finished 6th, which is one of his best runs he's had all year. Sheldon Creed had a great run for himself, considering what his years look like. Trevor Bayne and Myatt Snyder coming from the back to finish in the top 10. Gagson finished 4th, but got an argy-bargy with Jeb Burton. And then, of course, Noah Gagson's fan base went after Jeb Burton because that's what they're about. Same way as Carson Hocevar's fan base went after Ryan Preece after the end of that Truck Series race. But yeah, I mean, Allmendinger got stage points, but struggled. Bruckshot Jones got stage points in stage one. Brett Moffitt got 2 points from the stages and finished 11th. So really, what you see is what you get in regards to the results. there in the Xfinity race. Pretty clean. Nothing, only 8 cautions. Two of them were the stage cautions, so 6 for actual incidents. Um, Timmy Hill had actually qualified well, but then wrecked, cut a tire early, and finished dead last, unfortunately. Um, we talked about that on Twitter, but yeah, so it was a pretty straightforward race. The the junior motorsports guys basically had a lock on this race, and it shows the development of junior motorsports, where this team is kind of looking like the dominant effort, and it's probably a bad sign for the likes of Colleague Racing or Gibbs or whoever else would be in this playoff. That junior motorsport seems to be so strong, but I think for Josh Berry and what Dale Jr. wants, I don't think it's such a bad thing, Josh.
No, it's not. I mean, junior motorsports continue to dominate, and you know what I mean. I did not catch a lot of this race, but I did catch the end of it, and I tuned in at the right
Yeah,
time.
me neither.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's sometimes, Saturday's busy and everything, but, the Xfinity, I tuned in at the right time. They, with Justin Allgaier chasing down Josh Berry and then trying to get around him, and then he got around him, and then Josh Berry passed him back a couple laps later, and then Justin Allgaier was able to try to get around him, but then he hit the wall and then tried to get back up to Josh Berry, and then he did, but then Berry got around him, and then Josh Berry ended up winning the race, and Justin Allgaier hit the wall a little bit too much, a little too hard, and you're able to see uh, Josh Berry come away with the win. So it was a it was an interesting finish there, and definitely kind of a preview for the Cup Series with what we ended up seeing on Sunday, how that the racing itself transpired. So whatever they did to the Charlotte track this weekend, people are saying don't touch it, and I would agree with that. Although I feel like we need another sample size, which normally would be the fall Charlotte race, but then they moved it because it sucked to the Roval. So, I guess we're going to have to find out in a year from now, unless they decide to make an executive decision and take away the Roval race, which I'd honestly be okay with if they went back to the Oval, if it raced like how it raced this past weekend. So, it was a good battle between Justin Allgaier and Josh Berry, and Josh Berry coming away with the win here, and could put himself in position to be a title contender. And it's another victory for him. So uh, Junior Motorsports, yeah, continue to dominate with all their cars finishing fairly well, even with Justin Allgaier's that ended up finishing a lap down, but still, I think he still came away with a top 10, just the first car lap down. So overall, yeah, great race from that team. So we're gonna see how the battle shapes up throughout the rest of the year. Seems like the Joe Gibbs car is tied. Gibbs seems to have gone a little quiet right now, so we'll see if they come back later on in the year. But right now, Xfinity definitely looking like the junior motorsports playground.
And there's nothing wrong with that, honestly. I think the commitment that they have in Hendrick Motorsports help doesn't. It probably hasn't hurt them in any way. I mean, they're and after this week, they're going to have a well-earned break, so the momentum there, they're probably utilizing that momentum in their favor. When you look back outside of Tyler Reddick's win at Texas, the junior motorsports team has won the last four out of the last 5 races. So that was prior, and before that, uh, the Joe Gibbs Racing team was up there. So I mean, its momentum is there. You want to ride it out, and they have it going right now. Gibbs still has the most wins this year, 3. Um, Josh Berry is tied with Gagson with 2, so they're second in terms of playoff points. Gibbs is first with Gagson second and Berry third. Then Allgaier's fourth, but AJ Allmendinger has finished top 10 in 12 out of the 13 races this year, and has ran at the finish of every race this year. He's the only driver that can say that. Every other driver that is a regular or has run every start has fallen out of at least one race this year. So he has Allmendinger has a 33-point lead in the overall standings, which if he wins the regular season, that's 15 playoff points. But going into this weekend's race at Portland International Raceway, a racetrack he's won at in multiple race cars, I think it's an opportunity for him. And I would also look at it as an opportunity for the likes of Daniel Hemrick, to a lesser extent, even though he's not a great road racer, but likely, when you're looking at the point standings and what do you need to do to try to lock yourself in. Alfredo, Sheldon Creed is a good road racer. Moffitt at times has shown road racing prowess back in his Truck Series days. Jeremy Clements, Alex LeBay will be there, I'm sure. So those are some wild card people. Of course, LeBay hasn't won every race, so unfortunately he wouldn't get a waiver. But I think for Sheldon Creed coming off of a great run at Charlotte this past weekend, if he can go out there and win and basically flip the script on the season to get himself into the playoff, since Austin Hill, his teammate, is in the playoff, that would be huge for him. All right, so let's get into the roundup. Last week saw the Formula 2 series race at Monaco, and it continued the trend of Felipe Drogovic and what he's been able to do so far this year in domination. And all he's going to get out of that is he's not going to get a Formula One ride. But he won in race 2. He won the long race there. The sprint race didn't go as well for him. He ended up falling out, but he won 1 out of 2. He still got plenty of points. Dennis Hauger beats Jan Deruvula, his teammate, and then Marcus Armstrong finishes third. Enzo Fittipaldi and Yuri Vips round out the top 5. So Prema 1-2, High Tech 3-5. Logan Sargent finished 10th in the race 1. Trying to go through anybody else I don't really know. And then in race 2, Drogovic beats Teo Pocher, who qualified on pole there last year in F2. Yuri Vips finished third. Jack Doohan fourth. Enzo Fittipaldi fifth. Armstrong, Hauger, Deruvula, Sargent, Marino, Sato round out your top 10. So Drogovic is now leading by 31 points over Teo Pocher. The points, and then after that, it's really pretty much run. It's 49 points. Or 50. Yeah. So Jan Deruvula is in third, has a 3-point lead on Marcus Armstrong. From third to Logan Sargent in ninth is 15 points. So actually a pretty good battle for that. So as we go on, they'll be running at Baku here in a couple weeks' time. So anything can change amongst that group. Deruvula has scored in every race, so is Marcus Armstrong. Hence why they're up there. Jack Doohan, Yuri Vips have scored in 4 out of 5 races. Liam Lawson scored in every race, but only has had one huge points haul, and that was at Bahrain. So we will see what happens with that next time out in Baku. The next race, um, next thing we'll go into is MotoGP and Moto2 for their series. They ran, of course, at in Mugello this past weekend. So that was a good race for Pecco Bagnaia. Home race for him, home race for Ducati. Gets the win. Close battle with defending world champion Fabio Quartararo, who looks like he's going to be staying with the Yamaha team since they're only going to have two bikes. So there might be more commitment to actually making him better. Alice Espargaro rounds out the podium for Aprilia, Johan Zarco, and then the two VR46 Ducatis who both qualified on the front row, Marco Bezzecchi and Luca Marini, along with Fabio Di Gianantonio, who qualified on pole this past weekend. So that was an interesting front row there. Three customer Ducatis, all year-old bikes, all on the front row. Brad Binder, Taka Nakagami, Miguel Oliveira, who looks to be getting demoted, and Mark Marquez round out your top 10. Going through all the rest of the field. So they'll be racing at Catalunya this weekend. The standings going into the race this coming weekend. Quartararo has an 8-point lead on Espargaro. Quartararo and Espargaro both have a win apiece, but Quartararo has 3 second-place finishes and a fourth, while Espargaro has the one win and 4 consecutive third-place finishes, which is why that gap is the way it is. Enea Bastianini has 3 wins on the season, so winningest rider so far in 2022, but has 2 crashes, non-points finishes, which leave him 28 points behind in third. Pecco Bagnaia is fourth, 2 wins in his last 3 races. So he has a lot of ground to make up there. He's 41 points back in fourth. Johan Zarco is in fifth. Moto 2, mentioned earlier, in Mugello, saw Augusto Fernandez win to break the record. Augusto Fernandez, I thought it was, his teammate also is up there too, Jorge Navarro. Yeah. Augusto Fernandez sets a record. Coleman, Pedro. That's what I thought. It was Pedro Acosta. Yeah. Moto 3 champion. Crash going through. Yeah. Fernandez, 4th career victory and first since 2019. Why do I? Oh no, it's the wrong. Okay. That helps. So I'm like, yeah, there you go. I don't know what's. I'm like, why am I reading Augusto Fernandez? Because I know it's not Augusto Fernandez who won this last race, but they don't have the results for the race from yesterday. Wow, that's cute. Good job. Thank you for that. I can go to MotoGP and go on their website. That's why it was confusing me, because I'm like, and they have a brand new sponsor there on the Pramac team, so that's great. They have a different color scheme now. Riders and teams, go to that. That's not what I want. Where the heck? MotoGP. There we go. Yeah, MotoGP. I apologize for that right there and be with the little pygmies in New Guinea, man. Yeah, their website, the MotoGP website, isn't great to work around either. So we got to MotoGP and then race results, MotoGP, Moto2. There you go. So that's where the confusion lies. We finally got that. Pedro Acosta gets his first career Moto 2 win, youngest rider ever to win in Moto 2, breaking the mark set by Marc Marquez. Joe Roberts finished second, Iogura third, Tony Arbolino, Augusto Fernandez ran out of top five. Cameron Beaubier finishes seventh. So a good day for him, continuing the good positive momentum he's had here in recent rounds. Trying to get through, see the rest of them. Sean Dillon Kelly finished just a tenth of a second off of Kubo, the VR46, one of the VR46 riders from Thailand. So there is that. Last finisher. Everybody else crashed out of the race behind him, including Chantra, who has either crashes or finishes on the podium. In Moto 2 point standings, Celestino Vietti is now tied for the points lead with Iogura. Aaron Canet third. Joe Roberts is 3 points behind Canet. It's a good battle between Canet, Roberts, Arbolino, and Augusto Fernandez. 9 points between the four of them. And in Cameron Beaubier is 13th in points, 7 points out of 10th, after which Acosta, with his 25-point haul, jumped all the way up to 10th after this race. So be something to look at as we go along. Sean Dillon Kelly has scored points this year. He scored 3 points earlier in the season, so he doesn't. So it's not that he hasn't had opportunity to score points yet. He's ahead of former MotoGP rider Simona Corsi and Mattia Pacini, who doesn't have a job anymore. So that's interesting. Kubo and Kelly are only a point behind each other. If Sean Dillon Kelly can kind of get a good run here coming up, he could move himself way up the ladder here this coming weekend at Catalunya. The next one to go into is IMSA at Detroit. As mentioned earlier, they will have the DPI and GTD field for this weekend's Chevy Detroit Grand Prix. Just get through that part right over there. Move through all that. So yeah, 16 car field, the 6 DPIs and 1 and 10 GTD cars. So the usual suspects. The Konica Minolta Acura team's been on a roll. So let's see if Ricky Taylor, Philippe Albuquerque can continue that. Detroit has generally been a Cadillac circuit. It is a GM sponsored event. So wouldn't be surprised if either of the Ganassi Cadillacs or the Wheel and Engineering car or even the JDC Miller car stands out there. In terms of GT Daytona, 10 car field, Sellers and Snow in the Paul Miller Racing BMW, Frankie Montecalvo and Aaron Telitz and one of the Vassar Sullivan in the GTD Vassar Sullivan car, Ryan Hardwick, Jan Halen, Bright Motorsports Porsche. Jack Hawksworth has been ruled out. He had a accident, or he has a illness, one or the other. So he's out. They think it sounds like Richard Highstand is going to be taking over for him in the um, 16 car or
Yeah,
17
thanks. That's
car.
what I heard
This
too.
come Yeah. So um, trying to go and look that up. They don't have that. Okay, there you go. Why is it? Yeah, there you go. That's still not it. I saw it somewhere. It's probably over here. I'll probably go and do that. So, sports car, IMSA, Trackhouse, Glicken Horse one. What? Interesting. Yeah, I swear that I saw that about the one second Vassar Sullivan car, but the harder racing Aston with Roman DeAngelis, Ross Gunn, Mike Skeen will be back after having to miss Laguna because of COVID, and Stephen McAleer in the Korthoff Mercedes, Robert McGinnis, Jeff Westphal, Carbon, Lamborghini, Ryan Eversley, and Aiden Reed in the Rick Ware Racing Acura. The Windward Racing Mercedes of Russell Ward and Philip Ellis, and of course the Turner Motorsport BMW of Robbie Foley and Bill Auberlin. The 60 car and won Rolex. The 10 cars won a couple times this year. Both Ganassi Cadillacs have won so far this year in the IMSA WeatherTech series. So, I mean, the points standings right now in the point standings in 2022 for the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Of course, it's LMP3 they're showing. They can't even bring it up. Oh, that's awesome. So I guess we'll find out on NBC this coming weekend. They'll be on Saturday afternoon on USA and on Peacock, and then the IndyCar race will be on Sunday on USA and Peacock. The Formula E will run in Indonesia for the first time, uh, getting into the Formula E series, getting to the points, getting into forming open batteries, custom body work for Gen 4. Okay, that'd be nice. Standings going into this weekend's event. See Stoffel Van Dorn up by 12 points over Eduardo Mortara. Jean-Eric Verne is a further 4 points back in third. Mitch Evans, Robin Friends make up the top five. Defending world champion Nick DeVries, coming off of his first win of the year, or second win of the year, is sixth in points, 35 and 46 points out. So there's still time, but is going to have to make a move here quickly. There's only, what is it, 8 rounds to go in the season. So um, looking at Oliver Askew hasn't scored a point since the second round in Italy. So hopefully he can turn it around there. the American representation here in Formula E. And then Rally WRC, uh, it'll be in Italy. The standings right now of Cali Rovampera, who has won 3 consecutive rallies, up by 46 points on Thierry Neuville. Takamoto Katsuda is well back in third. The battle between Katsuda and going all the way down to Craig Breen, who are all running for Altanek, Efren Evans, is 4 points. Sebastian Loeb ran the last race in Portugal but fell out. Ogier also didn't score points. He had to he ended up having to go to Rally 2 regulations or whatever. And he also wasn't able to do anything there. So that is that in regards to rallying, and we'll get into other racing series as they go accordingly. Um, let's get into Detroit. I mean, how do you go or go from the Indianapolis 500 to the Detroit Grand Prix? Well, they do it all the time now. So, um, I guess the initial question is, who it goes back to after Indy, having to have the month of May at Indy. You're getting this next part of the season, Josh. Who has to go and respond here? Um, Getting into now that the biggest race of the year is gone, the biggest points that you're going to be able to earn is out. After this, they're going to be racing. They have Road America the following week. So you have Detroit, Road America, and then they have a few week break before Mid Ohio. Then time for Toronto, a doubleheader at Iowa, which will lead into Indy second Indy Grand Prix. Um, so the season kind of starts moving here. 3 consecutive weeks of racing, and then a break. This is a time, I guess, for the people who have gotten their place in the points, which Ericsson, of course, put himself in a position to take over the points lead. Uh, can he go and double up? Can he go and get another win at Detroit? Or can Pato O'Ward, who's second in points, go and match his win in the Detroit doubleheader from last year, and possibly go and take the points lead? Or is it going to be somebody else? Who are you looking at? Is it somebody that didn't have a great month that could go and come around and do what they have to do to get back in the points?
Well, I mean, I think, you have to start off with Marcus Ericsson because, well, I mean, he won part of the weekend last year at Detroit. Of course, he benefited from Will Power's thing, like we mentioned earlier in the show, but I mean, he was obviously up there in position to take advantage of that opportunity when that happened last year. So, right off the bat, you have to see if Marcus Ericsson can follow up the Indy 500 win with the basically defending his Detroit win from last year. So, it's definitely possible there. And, if any driver is able to win both races, which we've seen happen before in 2017 with Graham Rahal winning in Detroit, or it might have been 2016, but when he won it, two Detroit races, and it basically allowed him essentially another double points event, kind of like the Indy 500, and you're basically able to leapfrog in the standings if possible. So, if a guy like Marcus Ericsson was to, in theory, go out and win both races at Detroit, well, he's substantially added to his points lead over Pato O'Ward. And, for Pato O'Ward, he was in position last year to win the race as well. So Award last year didn't even lead until the very end. Of course, he stole the win from Joseph Newgarden. So it was definitely a great opportunity that he took advantage of for Award. So could happen again, and Award's been pretty good. Didn't start out the year all that great on the street courses, was really poor or middling finish at St. Petersburg, but he took a top five at Long Beach, and finished relatively well there. Won at Birmingham Road Course, so or at Barber Motorsports Park, so road course momentum could be on the upswing for a guy like Pato Ward and Marcus Ericsson as well. So uh, those two drivers right off the bat, I mean, they can continue pick up where they left off at the Indianapolis 500, and then of course, there are guys like Joseph Newgarden who didn't really have all that great month of May that could come back and potentially win the Detroit Grand Prix. Guys like Scott McLaughlin, who started out the year pretty good, winning at St. Petersburg, and he hasn't performed as well since then. He's well, he started out the points lead and at the beginning of the year through Texas, and then he's had a couple of hiccups as of late. So Detroit's a kind of a bounce back opportunity for a guy like Scott McLaughlin and his Team Penske teammate Joseph Newgarden. So there's two guys there. I think another guy that didn't really have a great month of May, or at least half of a great month of May, was Colton Herta, especially after the way that his Indianapolis 500 went down. He's probably wanting to get back into it onto the street courses where he's been so dominant on going back to last year. Can he bounce back from that Indy 500 disappointment and come out to the Detroit Grand Prix and have a both excellent set of races on race one and race two. So we'll have to see if he can come out with a good win there. Or if that's possible. And then you talk about Scott Dixon, who, of course, threw away his Indianapolis 500 with a speeding penalty on his final pit stop. Can he come back from that and go on a tear like we talked about? So a lot of drivers that didn't have that great a month of May who can easily come back and potentially. I mean, you have to view this event also as a double points event because there's two races at that same track, and if you're able to win both of them or finish well on both days, whether you win and take a podium or you win both races or something like that. It's an opportunity for basically almost a double points event, just like the Indianapolis 500. And you can, if you haven't had a great year, it can swing you right back into the thick of things in championship contention. Or if you're a guy like Marcus Ericsson, Pato Ward, can you easily separate yourself from the rest of the field in the championship standings?
Yeah, this year with Detroit, I think they swapped. This is the first time in a few years that they're not doing a double because the Iowa race with High V, they're running a double header,
Oh, I
300
made
lap.
that mistake.
No, it's
Uh,
all good because I would have made that mistake too. It throws me off, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, it's the first time since
oh,
2013 that they haven't run 2012 since they haven't run a doubleheader outside of the COVID year. Um, so it's unique. In their last race here on Belle Isle, they've been racing on and off at Belle Isle since 1992, and now this is the last time they're going to be racing there because Penske and company are going to go back to the streets of Detroit. So that'll be cool to see next year. The mean streets of Detroit, Indy cars racing there again on a circuit similar to the one that they ran um, in '91 and prior to that, and where the Formula One cars ran up until I think 1987 or 88. Yeah, it was 88, and then they ran. IndyCar took over in '89, ran 3 years there before they went to Belle Isle
yeah.
Park.
Well, forgive me for that mistake, I guess, because I just totally assumed that they were doing the double races they had, done in previous years, but I still feel like most of what I said could apply, though.
Well, yeah, no, because the reality is you have to look at this next three race. Like Indianapolis set up a three race pod here. You get the double points, but if you can get back, if you have momentum, you carry it through these next 3 weeks, it's a good stepping stone point towards what could be a championship. If you fall off here, it's going to be hard to catch back up. If you're able to do what you have to do at Detroit and then at Road America, which is one of the great legendary circuits in all the world, you can make this points battle because now the double points are gone. I mean, minus the double race at Iowa Speedway, which is a short oval. They don't really run that many short ovals in IndyCar anymore. I mean, at this point, we're talking about outside of Indianapolis and Texas, you have the two Iowa races. That's four, and then Gateway, so five. Uh, that the five oval races this year. So the Iowa race is first time in a few years they're going to be racing there. So we'll get into that as that time comes. But it's a big momentum deal for the top. Anybody who's in the top four in points right now, which is literally 24 points, you really want to do something at Detroit. Powers won there multiple times. Pato and Erickson, of course, come off of winning there last year. Palou hasn't won there, but he's been uber consistent. 95 and 26, 52 points. So Newgarden is just outside of a one race win um, uh, in fifth place, but he's somebody who probably wants to be able to reset his season. Dixon wants blood after a rare mistake. Colton Herta didn't have a great 500 week or so he's in 10th. He could start his climb back up with a good weekend there at Detroit. And then there's plenty of people that are behind that are outside of the top 10 in points. I would love to have a big run there at Detroit as well. The NASCAR Cup and Truck Series will be running at uh, Gateway, Xfinity, as I mentioned earlier, Portland. They haven't put out the entry list yet. It's too early in the week. But they'll be racing. The trucks will be racing on Saturday afternoon, and then the Cup Series will be racing on Sunday afternoon. So that'll be interesting there. The Toyota 200 at Worldwide Technology Raceway. It's interesting. Ross Chastain gave one at Gateway a few years ago, which led to one of the greatest announcing moments ever in general, which has been goofed on numerous times before because it is Vince Welsh. Because it sounded like he was either getting plugged by Michael Waltrip or having a stroke, one or the other. And then it makes sense we talk about Ross Chastain because he won there at Gateway previously, and the way that the Nice Motorsports team looks, they look like they're on the cusp of winning again with their regular driver, even though Ross Chastain ended up winning the race on Friday night. Enfinger finished second, John Hunter Nemechek third, Eckes fourth, Zane Smith fifth after winning one stage. Um, Tanner Gray, Kyle Busch, Chandler Smith, Stuart Friesen, Ben Rhodes, the top 10. Ben Rhodes won the second stage. And Ryan Prix ran up front most of the night, ended up finishing 11th. And we can go through some of the other people, but Carson Osavar led the most laps, led 57. It was him and Zane Smith led the majority of the race, but it ended up Hocevar and Priest racing for it at the end, and it didn't work out so well for either of them. A wreck which involved Jesse Little, and I don't know who else. Yeah, 7, was it 02 and 16? The 16 truck of Tyler Ankrum uh, led to a basically green white checkered, which saw Carson Hocevar lose um, the race essentially there. But as it goes into this weekend's race, I mean, Priest ain't going to be there. Hocevar has been running really, really well, Josh, uh, this season here in the last few races at least. I should probably go and bring up the um, racing reference uh, stats instead of the official stats because they don't give you everything you really need. Going into this race, I think it might be an opportunity. We keep on talking about when is Hocevar going to win, and now they're going to be on a regular. They're going to be racing every week. They're going to go from Gateway to Sonoma, then from Sonoma to Knoxville on the dirt, and then they'll be at Nashville for on the Nashville Super Speedway. So they're going to be racing the next, what is it? They've been racing since Darlington. So this is a big part of their schedule. Or uh, yeah, 8 races in a row before their next off week, and then they'll have a race at um, Mid Ohio. Then they'll have a break, then Pocono, and then Indy IRP. The after that, once they get past Nashville, the series kind of slows down a bit for a couple of months before they get into the playoffs. Actually, IRP is their playoff opener, so this is a big part of the season for them, Josh, and what they have to do. But looking at Carson Hocevar, his average finish and what he's been able to do, um, he looks like a star of the future. May have not had the greatest finish at Gateway, or I mean at Charlotte, but somebody who has a chance to be a standout given the right circumstances.
Yeah, I mean Carson Hocevar is eighth in the standings right now with 3 top 5s and 5 top 10s out of 10 races so far. But he's been on the upswing the last couple of weeks, last couple of races, and everything, and he's had the third most laps led so far to start the year. So or fourth most, so behind Zane Smith, Ben Rhodes, and John Hunter Nemechek. So he's up there with those guys. Those guys have been the class of the field, I think, to start off the year in the Truck Series. So I think it's only going to be a matter of time before he is able to go out and win a race, and everything could happen here at Gateway. If not, I mean it'll happen soon enough. I think with the way the season has gone for him, he's had a lot of good finishes to start the year. He's had a couple of seconds at Bristol Dirt, Darlington. Finished top 5 at Texas 2 weeks ago. Charlotte had a chance to win there, so it's only going to be a matter of time before he wins. Um, and like his chances here at Gateway, and could end up being their victory lane. Of course, he's gonna have to fight off guys like John Hunter Nemechek and Ben Rhodes and Zane Smith. So it's gonna be a tough battle, but he's shown that he can run up there up front with the best of them in this series, and he's definitely somebody that we're gonna have to watch out for here in the future in this series. So. It's going to be interesting. And then, we're after Gateway, we'll be going to Sonoma, which is going to be interesting because this truck series has not been to Sonoma in a long time, if ever. I think probably since at least the 90s, right?
Been the '90s,
Yeah.
early 2000s, something like that. It's been a long, long time.
So it's interesting they're going to Sonoma here, and then gonna have a dirt race at Knoxville, Tennessee, or Knoxville, Iowa. So it's gonna be an interesting couple weeks, and then Nashville. So before they have a couple of off weeks before the Mid Ohio event. So it's gonna be interesting for the trucks here. And then so if a guy like Carson Hocevar can go out and get a couple of wins here at possibly, I mean, I'm looking at Nashville and Gateway as possible opportunities for Carson Hocevar to get a win. So it's gonna be interesting. And then you got a couple of roadies with and dirt tracks with Sonoma and Knoxville Speedway. So those I think those two are going to be some wild card races here in the Truck Series, but definitely Gateway, which is a track that Truck Series is very familiar with, along with Nashville. A lot of history between those two tracks, traditionally truck tracks and Xfinity tracks in the past. So these drivers definitely have a lot of experience there. So yeah, I think Hosvar can win very soon. But have to compete with the rest of the guys in the truck series.
Yeah, and it's something I think a host of our I would say is a favorite, but I would also it I mean could probably look at the Kyle Busch trucks, Chandler Smith, and John Hunter. John Hunter's run well there before, even with his dad's team. So there is that. Zane Smith's been running well all year. It's hard to pick against that big three, honestly, um, of Zane Smith, um, John Hunter, Nemechek, and Chandler Smith. Uh, and to give the Cobblish Motorsports trucks, but we will see what comes of that on Saturday evening in the truck series, and we'll recap it here in the next episode. Get into the Xfinity Portland. They've never been there before with the Xfinity series, but we don't really have a lot to work with in regards to that other than AJ Allmendinger is a freaking alien on road courses, and he has won there before in an Indy car way back when, prior to committing to NASCAR. What is it, 16 years ago? Um, Other than that, there's going to be a bunch of road course ringers in there. Ty Gibbs has won on a road course before. The junior motorsports drivers have, I mean, Allgaier's been good on road courses over his career. But, Barry, it's not his forte. Gagson's in between. Mayer has Trans Am experience. You look at the colleague team, they usually benefit from the fact that AJ Allmendinger is there. Uh, is it a runaway for Allmendinger since the likes of Cindric aren't there? Or are we going to see a compelling race at Portland International Raceway for the Xfinity Series, Josh? Because it'll be a new race, and new opportunity. It's a definite opportunity and wild card race for that series.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the way that the series is ran, I mean, I think AJ Allmendinger is the obvious favorite, and with his road course experience and open wheel experience back in the kart days, in this or champ car days at this track, I think he's the obvious favorite. But then, yeah, you look at Ty Gibbs, who's run pretty well on road courses. He's won at Daytona and the road course there, so he's definitely an obvious threat. The junior motorsports, guys, not sure about Josh Berry, but of course, Justin Allgaier has been historically good on road courses at the Xfinity Series. So has Noah Gragson. I think has run pretty well at some of the road courses. He's ran somewhat well at Charlotte road course, so there is a little bit of history there. Sam Mayer also, like you said, has experience running road courses, so could turn out well for him. Um, the rest of the field though, it's a tough look. Uh, I mean, you've got guys like you know guys that are not really familiar to the road course scene overall. I'm just looking at the um, season regulars. In this series, but I mean, you may have guys that who don't normally run up front that will run up front. Guys like Alex Labay, who's got road course experience and has run pretty well at the Xfinity road course races that could run up in the top 10 or close to it. Um, so it's definitely a interesting look right now at who could possibly be good at this racetrack outside of um basically the top four guys in the Xfinity Series standings right now. So going to be an interesting race. We've never seen these cars race at this racetrack, so it's going to be a whole lot of action. I think drivers definitely trying to push the limit at this racetrack and trying to figure out how to get around it. And I mean, it's probably going to lead to an AJ Allmendinger domination thing if it happens. We'll have to see. But it could end up leading out to that. I mean, the only racing that we've really ever seen on this racetrack is Indy cars, Champ cars, racing at the at Portland. I don't think I think we maybe had a NASCAR truck race back in the
Trucks
'90s.
ran back in the
Yeah.
'90s, late '90s. Greg Biffle won there the 1 year with the Truck Series. I forget who was the other winner there, um, but I'm trying to go bring it back. I think it was the year. It was 1990. Was it 98? No. If I
Yeah, I
just go
got the
back, it was
results here.
99.
Andy Houston,
And
2000.
Andy, that's right. Andy Houston won in the number 60 truck. Yeah, that's right. The Cat, whatever, I forget what they had, because Caterpillar was sponsoring Warburton. And then, yeah, Greg Biffle won the first race there in 1999. Uh, he's he's of course from Oregon too, so home win. Beat his teammate Mike Bliss. Ron Fellows driving for Joe Nemechek led the most laps, and then Boris Said qualified on pole, so it was him and Ron Fellows on the front row, but Greg Biffle ended up getting the win. The three of them basically dominated the race, and then the you mentioned Andy Houston led one lap. Dennis Setzer led 23 laps in that race, and then Bob Keselowski, Mopar Performance Dodge, Jack Sprague led a lap, finished third. Kurt Busch, Bush, uh, led 12 laps after starting in second. His teammate Greg Biffle started on pole, led 22 laps. And then Boris Said, who started third, um, had 14 laps, finished 15th. It says Jimmy Spencer was his owner. How the hell does that happen? That was Ernie Irvin and Mark Simo owned that team, but whatever. Excuse me. So, yeah, those are the two races at Portland. So it'll be the first time in 22 years that one of the top three NASCAR series will be racing at Portland International Raceway. And I think the thing to focus on, uh, other than the fact that AJ Allmendinger in the last 10 Xfinity races, thanks to Racing Reference, has 9 top fives and 4 wins in the last 10 races on a road course, and, which is pretty epic. Gagson has 7 top tens. Brandon Jones has 6 top tens. Both of them have 4 top 5s in that span. Allgaier fourth, Myatt Snyder. I guess if you really want to get frisky with your money, Myatt Snyder would be an interesting one to take because, of course, he really needs all the help he can get if he wants to make the playoff. Um, Riley Herbst would be another one, uh, based on being having run the last 10 road course races. And then, of course, Ty Gibbs only has 7 road course starts, running at the finish at 6 of them on the lead lap in all of those 6. 2 poles, three, 2 wins and 3 top 5s. So there is that. Jeb Burton, another guy, has run decent on road courses. Jeremy Clements, a former winner at Road America. So those are some of the people to look at this coming weekend. I think Hemrick is looking at it as an opportunity after the rough season he's had to possibly go and sneak a victory if AJ Allmendinger doesn't get the win. But I think if you're AJ Allmendinger or Noah Gragson, you're trying to battle for this regular season title, it's a chance to go and solidify your spot there. Lasting truck or the Cup Series Gateway. What should we expect? Is it going to be similar to the flat track racing that we've had so far this year, Josh? Or does the opportunity with 2 different corners, different banking, the opportunity to shift with this Gen 6 or Gen 7 car, we might see a different type of race? I think the tire is going to be much harder than, what I guess they've been running earlier in the season, so it may not exactly allow the most passing. Uh, you could say that it'll be a very track position centric race at Gateway, first time for the Cup Series there. But what are your thoughts, and who do you look at to be someone that can go out there and do some work at Gateway this coming weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be an interesting race. And I'm not sure how well it's gonna look like with the flat tracks. I mean, maybe kind of like Phoenix, in a way. Phoenix is kind of maybe a similar track, if you discount the dog leg. Just in the makeup, maybe turn 1 and 2, similar to what is now Phoenix 3 and 4 somewhat, and then, turns 1 and 2 at Phoenix, similar to 3 and 4 at Gateway, um, kind of like that, sort of, kind of, sort of, so maybe something like that. Of course, long straights gonna allow for shifting, and, if, cars get behind each other nose to tail, maybe somewhat of a draft, or slipstream of some kind. Although I don't know if they'll go fast enough like the Indy cars to be able to kind of allow for that opportunity, like that. But we could see, track position be important, or we could see a kind of a wild and chaotic race like we saw this past weekend at the Coke 600. So it's going to be a interesting event, one way or the other, just because it's a new racetrack, or it could be something like, last year at Nashville, also another new racetrack on the schedule. That one we thought it was going to be a boring race, but it turned out that tires mattered a whole lot at that racetrack, and Goodyear bringing a harder tire maybe doesn't come into play, but then maybe it does. So we'll see how the tire situation ends up if we have comers or goers on this racetrack, because we've never seen the Cup cars race on this racetrack before, and then on top of that, we're having a brand new car, brand new tire, formula. So it's going to be interesting to see. As far as contenders in this race, I mean, it's hard to look at. I mean, you automatically think the top guys in the series, um, and would think that guys like William Byron, Chase Elliott, could be good at this racetrack. Obviously, they have had good success on the flat tracks. Maybe somebody like Chase Briscoe or Ross Chastain, newcomers to the series in the last couple of years, who, um, they shown what they can do this year on the racetrack when they have the opportunity to do so. So Chase Briscoe, of course, winning at Phoenix, and I mentioned the Phoenix pretty similar track. So if they find themselves up front, at the end they could be possible contender for the win, maybe. So we're gonna have to see. Um, you know, uh, Joey Logano could be somebody to look at. Uh, I guess if you count the Clash as being a flat track type of event, even though it was a short track, maybe it counts towards something. So it's a tough look right now, only because it's a new racetrack. Guys that have had success here at this track in the past. I mean, Kevin Harvick has had success in the Xfinity Series. I think Denny Hamlin's probably had some success. Brad Keselowski, of course, remember the finish between him and Carl Edwards back in 2010, where he got crashed, and Bob Keselowski with the famous "he ain't gonna kill my boy" rant there. He's been a back marker for most of the year with um, RFK Racing, but this new track could be an opportunity to possibly steal a top 10 or a top 5 potentially, depending on how the way that things go at this racetrack. So it's hard to pick a winner right now, but we'll have to see what happens. And I feel like I'd lean towards more on experience rather than on raw talent here at this racetrack. So probably would have to pick a veteran here to win this race.
Yeah, it's a good call in that sense. I'm trying to go and look up where they have the last race they ran at Gateway in the Xfinity series. It seems like it's been a while. Because I'm trying to look for it and I can't find it. Because was it 20? Because it was 2010 when they did. That's when um, the Roid Rage went and ran over uh, Brad Keselowski. Was 2010. So let me go back there. So yeah, Gateway. There you go. It was the last. That was the last time they ran at Gateway was 2010, and they ran twice there. Edwards won, and Brad Keselowski won the second race there. Um, Kyle Busch is a former winner. Edwards won 3 times. Martin Truex won there in 2004. Kevin Harvick, a 2-time winner at Gateway, but it was more than 20 years ago. Getting to some of the truck guys. I'm trying to see. Kevin Harvick has won there in a truck.
Cole
So is
Custer,
Bubba Wallace. Cold Custard,
Christopher
Christopher
Bell,
Bell.
Justin
Yeah,
Haley,
just yeah,
and Ross
Ross
Chastain.
Chastain.
So
So, I mean, if we're going based on the experience thing, any of them guys would be good. It'd be a good wild card pick if you wanted to go and get crazy and pick Brad Keselowski. He has success there, has had success there. And if you get into the statistics here, fantasy wise, I mean, Harvick has the best average finish of drivers in the last 10 races on oval tracks less than or equal to 1.25 miles, which is the track length at Gateway. Um, Average finish is 7.3, running at the finish in the last 10, all on the lead lap, 8 top 10 finishes. So could sneak one up there. Of course, Bowman, the showman, always seems to sneak up there and do work that way. Blaney, Larson, Logano, your top 5 in terms of average finish. And Clyde in 6th there, just under an 11th place finish there. So Byron, Chastain, Truex, and Hamlin. Brad Keselowski 11th, Kyle Busch 12th, Christopher Bell 13th. So we just mentioned a bunch of people. Do we know who's going to win? No. Should it be interesting? Hopefully it will be. But I guess we'll find out. Josh, let us know what's going on the sim racing side. What you're going to be doing here next week or so in regards to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting deal with sim racing now. Obviously, Indianapolis is over and kind of back to the regular deal on sim racing. I'm going to have to pull up the schedule here for this week on iRacing. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's think iRacing trying to get the schedule out on my TV here, but uh with the way it works, I mean, yeah, here I've got it pulled up on my monitor here, but yeah, current series this week, uh, NASCAR. I think NASCAR will be at Gateway this week, mimicking the real schedule. So I may try to, go out and run some of those races, which that's going to be something that I'd like to try. I do like Gateway in the Indy cars. From what I've run there, so I may try running some of the Cup races on the Indy or on Gateway here. So, and then of course the Open Series Indy cars at Belle Isle at the Detroit Grand Prix. So I've never tried that racetrack. I don't think I have that racetrack right now, but may try to obtain that one and run the IndyCar Open Series on the Belle Isle Road Course, which should be interesting. Which, having never really done a whole lot of road course racing on the IndyCar side, um, definitely need to dip my toes in there and try that out. I think, yeah, NASCAR, of course, at Gateway, the Legend Series running at the Nashville Fairgrounds, so that might be interesting to try out there as well. Let's see, and then some of the road course series in iRacing running at Road America, that might be something to try out. Laguna Seca. Um, let's see what else. What else can I try out here? Uh, yeah, Detroit Grand Prix and some of the other road course series outside of Indy road course. Um, Maybe I don't know. Michelin Pilot Challenge running at Imola. Don't know if I would do that one. That doesn't sound too exciting, but could be interesting. So there's a lot of opportunity to go out and run different series here. So it's going to be just kind of pick and choose which one, pick your poison. So a lot of opportunity, but definitely at least try out Gateway in the Cup car. Maybe have a little bit of better idea what we might be expecting here on Sunday. Considering we have no idea what's going to happen in this race, being a new racetrack with everything. So that could potentially be an opportunity, and then maybe do some Road America on one of the road course series that I run with the Mazda Miata and the Ford Mustang GT 500. Could end up running in that series, which is always fun there. So yeah, kind of back to the normal deal in iRacing after all the special events, and then you mentioned earlier Le Mans, which I think iRacing no longer has the official 24 hours of Le Mans event. There's another game or sim game that does it these days. I forget which one. It might be R Factor or another racing game. So we'd have to go on that platform to try out. But there might be a private event or something for the 24-hour Le Mans on iRacing because they still have the Circuit Lasarth track on iRacing. I don't think they have the rights anymore to hold a official iRacing 24 hours of Le Mans sim event, and that's with another racing game, which might be R Factor, but I have to go and check later. So that might be something later in the future, or something like another 24-hour event like the 24 hours of Daytona, which would be next year, which plenty of time to get acclimated to the um, iRacing. I think Delara P217 is what it is that they run in iRacing for the I guess what would be the equivalent to the DPI international class that they run in real life in IMSA. So that we definitely have a lot of time there. Plus, a lot of time just to hone the road course craft, which is not quite as well as the oval craft, but can be good at some places. So we'll have to see there. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity this week, I guess this weekend, to do stuff on iRacing for sure.
Yeah, so that's I guess um, the end of it for us here today and this week on the Grip Strip podcast. We'll be back next week to talk about all things that went on here and the NASCAR races, both at Gateway, Portland, IndyCar, Detroit, leading into a full road course weekend because trucks and Cup will be at Sonoma on the whatever short course or whatever you want to
The
call
short
it, the
shoot.
NASCAR course. Yeah, with the Jeff Gordon shoot that they had in '97, and from that point on is when Jeff Gordon started winning road course races. Um, they'll add that back. They'll have IndyCar Road America, and then Formula One will be at Baku. We'll get in all of that as well, and anything else that's in motorsports. Talk about roundup of motor. We'll talk about motorcycles and the like as well. So, um, Josh, where can we find you on the socials so we can follow you and follow your streams?
Yeah, of course. The iRacing stuff is on Twitch TV/UCO2. Go follow that and see all the stuff. Of course, still have the iRacing Indy 500 events that recorded recently, which you can go in there and watch that, which I, of course, won. You can see how I won it and how that transpired. Follow Twitter at JP Huffline, of course, and follow my takes there and see all the things that, I thought about the Indianapolis 500 this past weekend and Coke 600 this past weekend, and all my takes on other topics like the Jacksonville Jaguars and the like. So follow me on there. And then, of course, we've got our YouTube channel, Gripster Podcast. Go there, subscribe, and like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Of course, subscribe, get all the notifications when we release videos. So when it happens, you can get the notification that it dropped. Usually we drop those on Wednesdays, so or well, it ends up being released on Wednesdays. And go there and have a thing you can listen to while you're at the office working or doing whatever, and have it playing in the background and see us talk or do whatever. So we just had our um, Greatest Day in Motorsports Part 1 and 2 that we released, and with our friends Joe Passero and Spencer Neff, and we had a great discussion, talking about Indianapolis 500 and Monaco Grand Prix and NASCAR 600, World 600 at Charlotte, and how, our thoughts on that, particular day, and then previewing that. So, catch up on whatever you missed the past couple weekends. You can go there and watch our feed and see what we think and everything. So yeah, that's where you can follow me and where you can follow our video streams at.
Yeah, and you can uh, when it comes to Josh. I mean, obviously Indy 500 champion Josh Fine, so we have to. I mean, since what you are in the
Yeah,
same,
that's
well,
correct.
not really. I mean, it is, but you haven't poured milk on yourself on the show live. So that's probably, if you do that, then
Oh,
you would be in the same level, I guess, as Marcus Erickson, but then you'd smell like shit, and it probably is not something you want to do to yourself.
I'd probably have to go take a
Um,
shower afterwards.
I'd rather, I guess, chug milk, even though it may not be good for your colon, but that would be a
Oh, I'm
cool look
fine
for
with
us
milk.
here. Okay,
Yeah.
then yeah, then let's do a milk chug here to celebrate your Indy 500 win here in a future episode. That's what we're gonna do, and then we will share it on at Gripstrip Pod on Twitter. It'll also appear, of course, on our YouTube page. Like, comment, and subscribe, or follow and subscribe, but also follow us on Twitter at Gripstrip Pod. You can follow me at Philip G. Matthew. If Josh does chug, then I will retweet it on my Twitter handle at Philip G. Matthew. Find me on Facebook occasionally. Um, Gripster Podcast is on philipgmatthew.com, my blog site. but it's also on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, Verbal. Basically, if you need to find a podcast, you can find the Grip Strip podcast. And if you're already listening, I figure you found us already anyway. But let friends know if you like racing, you like sports, football, hockey. My Colorado Avalanche are in the Western Conference Finals. The NBA Finals are about to start with the
Colorado.
Celtics. Yeah, because of Patrick Waugh. One of the greatest goalies ever.
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump on the Tampa Bay Lightning bandwagon.
Well, I think that's what the Stanley Cup Finals may be. So then I guess we'll have something to talk about, hopefully. But Edmonton is a tough out with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So if Colorado can get past with um, Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar, it'd be pretty good. First time in 20 years since the Colorado Avalanche have been in the conference finals. They start tomorrow. I'll be at league, so bowling in the doubles league at Majestic, which, considering how shitty I bowled last week, probably due to the health issues I was having. Hopefully, I'll do better. I figure I will. Kind of have to. But thank you for listening to the Grifter podcast. Thanks, Josh, as always, for doing your part and providing great content and insights that you do. And for us, even in this time where dealing with all these unnecessary and ridiculous tragedies in our world, being good to one another and caring for one another matters, and hope that's what you're able to do. We provide a little bit of a respite here um, in your leisure time or in your work day to get away from the craziness of what our world has seemingly become. Hope that we're able to provide you just a little bit of enjoyment and happiness in that time. So we thank you for that. Thank you for following, liking, and subscribing. And we'll be back next week for episode 118 of the Grip Strip podcast. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care and goodbye.